第16話、薩長同盟。池田屋事件後、京の町は静けさを取り戻したかに見えた。しかし、その裏では薩摩藩と長州藩の間で密かな交渉が進んでいた。薩摩と長州はかつて敵対していたが、共通の敵である幕府に対抗するために手を組むことを決意する。元治元年1864年、日本の運命が大きく動こうとしていた。京の都では幕府の意向が薄れ、攘夷派と開国派の対立が激化していた。その中でも、薩摩藩と長州藩は特に際立った存在だった。薩摩藩の西郷隆盛は、身を乗り出して地図を眺めていた。その目は燃えるような決意に満ちていた。一方、長州藩の桂小五郎、改め木戸孝允は、冷静な眼差しで書状を読み解いていた。彼らの目的は一つ、幕府を倒し、新たな日本を築くことだった。薩摩藩と長州藩は、かつて敵対関係にあった。しかし、彼らは共に外国との戦いで苦い経験をし、日本の未来を憂慮していた。西郷と木戸は共通の敵、幕府に対抗するために手を組むことを決意する。木戸さん、我々が力を合わせれば、幕府を倒すことができるでしょうか。西郷は問いかけた。それができると信じています。ただ、我々の目標は単なる倒幕ではない。その後の日本をどう導くかが重要です、と木戸は静かに答えた。彼らの密会の場所は、京の郊外にある古びた寺だった。夜の闇に紛れて、二人は慎重に寺の中に入った。ろうそくの明かりが揺れる中、二人の会談が始まった。我々はまず、イギリスとフランスから武器を購入し、兵を整えねばなりません、と西郷は切り出した。そして、幕府に対して一斉に攻撃を仕掛けるのです。木戸はうなずき、そのためには、我々の意志を統一し、共に行動することが必要です。長州の孤立を解消し、薩摩との連携を強化しましょう。会談の最後に、西郷と木戸は杯を交わし、同盟の誓いを立てた。これが薩長同盟の始まりであった。二人はそれぞれの藩に戻り、準備を進めることを約束した。この同盟は、日本の未来を変える第一歩です、と、西郷は誓った。その通りです。幕府を倒し、新たな時代を切り開きましょうと、木戸は力強く答えた。19世紀半ば、中国はかつての栄光を取り戻すことに必死であったが、外部からの圧力に次第に押しつぶされつつあった。清朝の末期、その広大な領土は徐々に欧米列強の手に渡り、帝国の誇りは音を立てて崩れ去ろうとしていた。1842年、アヘン戦争の敗北を受け、清朝は南京条約を締結せざるを得なかった。香港がイギリスに割譲され、上海、広州、アモイ、寧波、福州の5港が開かれた。これにより、外国人居留地が設置され、清の主権は大きく揺らいだ。この土地が我らの手から離れるとは、と、広州の役人は、苦々しくつぶやいた。外国人が我が物顔で街を歩き、交易を行う姿に、清朝の官僚たちははがみした。1850年、広州前率いる太平天国が南中国で反乱を起こした。太平天国は南京を占領し、一時的に新たな政権を樹立した。この内乱は清朝をさらに弱体化させ、外国勢力は混乱に乗じて影響力を拡大していった。このままでは我々の国は滅びてしまうと、北京の官僚たちは焦燥感に駆られた。外国勢力の助けを借りて太平天国を鎮圧したが、 その代償は大きかった。次々と押し寄せる外国勢力の波。イギリス、フランス、ロシア、ドイツ、そして後に日本も。彼らは清の弱体化を見て、各地で不平等条約を押し付け、領土を切り取っていった。薩摩藩邸の一室、ろうそくの揺れる明かりが二人の顔を照らし出していた。西郷隆盛と木戸孝允は向かい合い、緊張感の漂う空気の中、話を始めた。西郷どん、今のシーンを見てどう思うか。木戸が静かに切り出した。清はかつて強大な帝国じゃったが、今は見る影もない。列強諸国に分割統治され、北京すらも外国の支配下にある。あの光景はまるで悪夢のようじゃ。西郷は苦々しい表情で答えた。彼の目には清が列強に支配される姿が鮮明に浮かんでいた。清の運命は他人事ではない。我々日本もこのままでは同じ運命をたどるかもしれんと木戸は続けた。イギリスやフランスの船が我々の港に入ってくるのを想像してみろ。彼らが我々の土地を奪い支配する日が来るかもしれんのだ。その通りじゃ。清が列強に分割される姿を見て日本の未来を憂うのは当然じゃ。我々がこのまま幕府の無策に任せていては清と同じ運命を迎えることは避けられん。だからこそ我々は行動しなければならないと木戸の声は強くなった。攘夷は現実的ではない。今は外国の力を借りてまずは幕府を倒し新たな体制を築くことが先決だ。西郷は深くうなずいた。薩摩も長州もこの危機感を共有している。我々が手を結び共に行動すればまだ希望はある。だがそのためにはまず信頼を築かなければならん。その通りだ。我々は過去の対立を乗り越え新たな日本を築くために協力しなければならないと木戸は応じた。列強の支配を恐れるだけではなくその恐怖を原動力に変えるのだ。未来のためにと西郷は杯を掲げた。日本を守るために。木戸も杯を掲げ日本の未来のためにと誓った。その夜彼らは固く握手を交わし日本の未来を切り開くための同盟を結成した。薩長同盟が結ばれたことで両藩は急速に武装を強化し戦の準備を進めた。幕府側もこの動きを察知し京の治安維持に力を入れ始める。しかし薩長の決意は固く幕府打倒のために全力を尽くす覚悟だった。彼らの背後には清国の参上という強烈な恐怖があった。強大な清が列強に支配される姿は日本の未来への危機感を煽り彼らを突き動かしていた。そんな中穏健派の孝明天皇が崩御する。天皇は公武合体を模索していたため新選組は幕府と朝廷から公式に認められていた。しかし後ろ盾を失った新選組は孤立し次第にその影を落とし始める。新選組の中で異彩を放つ伊藤家四太郎は静かに動き出す。彼は新選組の行く末に疑問を抱き独自の道を模索する。その動きはやがて新選組の内部に大きな波紋を呼ぶことになる。
Episode 16, The Satsuma Chashu Alliance. After the Ike Daya incident, the streets of Kyoto seemed to regain their calm. However, behind the scenes, secret negotiations were taking place between the Satsuma and Choshu domains. Although Satsuma and Choshu had once been enemies, they decided to join forces to fight against their common foe, the shogunate. In the first year of Genji 1864, Japan's fate was on the verge of a significant shift. The shogunate's authority in the capital of Kyoto was waning, and the conflict between the factions of pro-foreign opening and anti-foreign exclusion was intensifying. Among the factions, the Satsuma and Choshu domains stood out the most. Seigo Takamori of the Satsuma domain leaned forward as he gazed at a map, his eyes filled with fiery determination. On the other hand, Kido Takayoshi, formerly known as Katsura Kagoro of the Choshu domain, calmly deciphered a letter with a composed expression. They shared a single goal: to overthrow the shogunate and build a new Japan. Satsuma and Choshu had once been adversaries. However, both had suffered bitter experiences in battles against foreign powers, and they feared for Japan's future. Seigo and Kido decided to form an alliance to confront their mutual enemy, the shogunate. Kido-san, do you think we can defeat the shogunate if we join forces? Seigo asked. I believe we can. However, our goal is not simply to overthrow the shogunate. What is crucial is how we will guide Japan afterward, Kido quietly replied. Their secret meeting took place at an old temple on the outskirts of Kyoto. Under the cover of darkness, the two men cautiously entered the temple. In the flickering candlelight, their discussion began. First, we must purchase weapons from Britain and France and prepare our troops, Seigo began. Then, we will launch a simultaneous attack against the shogunate. Kido nodded. For that, we must unify our intentions and act together. We need to end Choshu's isolation and strengthen our cooperation with Satsuma. At the end of their meeting, Seigo and Kido exchanged cups of sake, pledging their alliance. This was the beginning of the Satsuma-Choshu alliance. Both men promised to return to their respective domains and proceed with preparations. This alliance is the first step toward changing Japan's future, Seigo vowed. Indeed. Let us overthrow the shogunate and usher in a new era, Kido responded resolutely. In the mid-19th century, China was struggling to reclaim its former glory but was increasingly crushed by external pressures. In the waning days of the Qing dynasty, its vast territories were gradually being seized by the Western powers, and the empire's pride was crumbling. In 1842, following its defeat in the Opium War, the Qing dynasty was forced to sign the Treaty of Nanjing. Hong Kong was ceded to Britain, and 5 ports, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, and Fuzhou, were opened. This led to the establishment of foreign concessions, significantly undermining China's sovereignty. To think this land would slip from our hands, a Guangzhou official bitterly muttered. Foreigners walked the streets with an air of dominance, conducting trade, and Qing officials could only grind their teeth in frustration. In 1850, Hong Xiuquan led the Taiping Rebellion in southern China. The Taiping forces occupied Nanjing and temporarily established a new government. This civil war further weakened the Qing dynasty, and foreign powers took advantage of the chaos to expand their influence. If this continues, our nation will fall. Bureaucrats in Beijing grew increasingly anxious. They managed to suppress the Taiping Rebellion with foreign assistance, but the cost was enormous. Foreign powers continued to press in, one after another: Britain, France, Russia, Germany, and later, Japan. Sensing China's weakness, they imposed unequal treaties and carved out territories for themselves. In a candlelit room of a Satsuma residence, the flickering light illuminated the faces of 2 men. Seigo Takamori and Kido Takayoshi sat across from each other, beginning their conversation in an air filled with tension. Seigo-san, what do you think of the current state of the Qing dynasty? Kido quietly began. The Qing was once a mighty empire, but now it's a shadow of its former self. The Western powers have divided and ruled over it, and even Beijing is under foreign control. That sight is like a nightmare, Seigo answered bitterly. Seigo's expression was grim as he vividly recalled the image of China under foreign domination. What's happening to the Qing isn't someone else's problem. If we continue like this, Japan might meet the same fate, Kido continued. Imagine British and French ships entering our ports. There may come a day when they seize and rule over our land. You're right, Seeing the Qing divided by the Western powers, it's only natural to worry about Japan's future. If we leave things to the shogunate's inaction, we won't be able to avoid the same fate. That's why we must take action. Kido's voice grew stronger. Excluding foreigners is not realistic. We need to borrow their strength for now, overthrow the shogunate, and establish a new system. Seigo nodded deeply. Both Satsuma and Choshu share this sense of crisis. If we join hands and act together, there is still hope. But first, we must build trust. Exactly. We must overcome our past conflicts and work together to build a new Japan. Kido agreed. Rather than fearing foreign domination, we should turn that fear into a driving force. For the future, Seigo raised his cup. For the protection of Japan. Kido also raised his cup, vowing. For the future of Japan. That night, they shook hands firmly and forged an alliance to open the path to Japan's future. With the formation of the Satsuma Chashu Alliance, both domains rapidly strengthened their military forces and began preparing for war. The shogunate also sensed this movement and increased efforts to maintain security in Kyoto. However, Satsuma and Choshu were resolute, fully determined to overthrow the shogunate. Driving them was the intense fear of becoming like China. The sight of the once mighty Qing dynasty being controlled by foreign powers heightened their sense of crisis and pushed them into action. During this time, Emperor Komian, a moderate figure, passed away. As the emperor had sought harmony between the imperial court and the shogunate, the Shinsengumi had been officially recognized by both. However, with the loss of this backing, the Shinsengumi found themselves increasingly isolated, and their influence began to wane. One man stood out within the Shinsengumi, Ito Kashitaro. Quietly, he began to move. He had grown doubtful about the Shinsengumi's future and started to seek his own path. His actions would eventually cause significant ripples within the Shinsengumi.